Hey guys, and thank you for joining us on the Designated Pundits 2025 season preview number 2. Today we're talking about the Columbus Crew. It is January 18th, Saturday, one of the earlier previews that we're doing, and it's because we think this Columbus Crew team is pretty much done. They are simmered. They are ready for preseason. We know a lot about these teams. That's why we're going over them a little earlier than usual. Joining us today from the Massive Report, Ty Fisher, friend of the show, someone we've worked with quite a bit here. Really happy to get this going again. Ty, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. It's another day in paradise. How are you guys?
Man, what a great answer. Living the dream, Ty.
That's my answer for everything, honestly.
I'm old enough where you start answering living the dream non-ironically. Okay, anyway, we have a really good show for you here. Make sure you click that bell icon so you get notified every time we go live. You can find us youtube.com/at the Designated Pundits, thedesignatedpundits.com, or on your favorite podcast app. Just search for the Designated Pundits or go to our website and you can get a customized link to your favorite podcast host there. That's going to help us bring you content like this each and every year. I think this is the 4th or 5th year we've been doing season previews, all 30 teams, going in order, not from best to worst, but from like most prepared to teams we can't preview until a week before the season because they're, signing DPs in March, that kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get going with today. Pull up the graphics here and talk a little bit about the Columbus Crew. Last year, 2024 recap, 19-9-6 record. Second in Major League Soccer with 72 goals scored and 40 goals allowed. That's a plus 32 goal differential. Not only were they good on offense, they were elite on defense, and that is a winning recipe. They lost to Red Bull in the first round of the playoffs. We're going to talk a lot about that in just a bit. Ty, I'm going to throw over to you, and my first question for you is going to be, what was your favorite part of the 2024 Major League Soccer season? It could be anything.
Oh, man. My favorite part probably is, we didn't win MLS Cup, but we still ended the season with the trophy. 3-1 defeat over LAFC in League's Cup final. Third time in, I say about, it was like 6 or 7 months that we absolutely annihilated LAFC, the imposter black and gold team, as Crew fans would say. But I think that's probably the high of the season was that LAFC Crew Leagues Cup final.
So break us down what exactly happened, because you guys, at no point did I ever get the feeling that Columbus was like this inevitable force. But they played really good every game. They were competitive. Again, you see this. Some teams, like we already talked about Seattle, they were defensive, very low goals scored, but nothing conceded. Columbus was great on both sides of the ball last year.
Yeah, I think one part of it is that we get the same core guys back from our 2023 MLS Cup run. We lose a couple guys like Zelarayan in 23, Aiden Morris this past year to Middlesbrough, but we get a bunch of the core guys from that 23 run, and it took a while in 23 to kind of get the system right and to get acclimated to it, but in 24, I think it was just they knew what they knew what they wanted to do, they knew how to do it, but then it was just how can we change something different. Every team has the book on us now, so how can we tweak things and make it still seem like we're playing our brand of soccer, which we did, but it's a different Crew team than past years, obviously. And Wilfred Nancy is just a great coach.
That's really the pin for me that holds everything together. And no coach in Major League Soccer history was ever as coveted as Wilfred Nancy was when he was, I forget what Canadian team was he. Montreal, one of those guys there.
Montreal.
Yep. I mean, he was courted by the Columbus Crew. They were like, "This is our guy. We're going to throw the bag at him and get him." To me, that makes the whole difference. You talked about Zelarayan when he left the team. Some teams don't run with number 10s. Columbus was kind of like a 5-2-2-1, kind of adapted really heavily throughout the year. A lot of really big-time contributors there, and that's really what we're going to break down next. Cucho Hernandez, 19 goals, 10 assists. Yeah, Diego Rossi with 12 goals, 7 assists. Christian Ramirez, 8 goals, 3 assists. Arfston, 4 goals, 5 assists. Farsi, 4 goals, 2 assists. And Alexandru Matan, no matter how inept he could be at some games he just showed up, and it seemed like every one of those was against the New York Red Bulls. I think I saw 3 of those goals personally last season. 4 goals, 2 assists throughout his stretch there. When you see this chart, obviously a little top heavy. We had a lot of contributors, a lot of guys scoring goals. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said this on multiple shows, but the three-headed dragon, which is your first three right there, is just an absolutely wonderful trio that is goal hungry, right? Cujo Hernandez is probably the best goal scorer that there is. Forget Messi and all them, but I think Cujo is probably the one guy that if you needed a number 9 on your team that can contribute on both sides of the ball, whether it's scoring goals, whether it's assisting. I think Cujo Hernandez is that guy. Diego Rossi comes in midseason in 23, a little bit slow of a start, but then he picks it up. Continues where he left off in 23 and 24 with those 12 goals and 7 assists. Ramirez is a big aerial threat. He gets the opening goal against LAFC in LA. He can finish both feet. But I think those three right there are just an absolute three-headed dragon. Then Max Arfson, the sleeper that everybody sleeps on. He's very good with his left. Scores with his right also, but Max Arfson taking that role from Yao Yabo on the left wing back side, paired up with Mo Farsi on the right, is just. I think it's probably the best wing back duo. And then with Matan, as you said, a bit inept in some matches, but when he shows up, he shows up. Hat trick against New England Revolution in front of Caleb Porter, who he did not get along with at all during Porter's stint here in Columbus. So, but the first three are just are your go to guys, honestly.
Yeah, look, I got no. Yes. Columbus is a tough one because normally at this point I'd be like, yeah, but let me ask this question about this concern about a player or whatever. But I just with Columbus, like I don't have concerns. If I get nitpicky, I can say, okay, maybe I love what you just said, but Cucho had spells last season that he was not available to the team. I think some injuries, I think some disciplinary issues. I
Yep.
can't remember exactly. Do we think that's worked out? Do we think that might rear its head again this next season?
Ironically enough, I think to touch on the disciplinary issues that you brought up, that Nashville game, I think last year, where it was the Charlotte FC game. It was Columbus in Charlotte during the last official week that we had the replacement referees. He steps off, has a little bit of a banter with a coach, and then the Nashville game, he sat out another game too. And I asked Wilfred Nancy once he was back integrated with the team. I asked him, did that disciplinary action, time off, kind of rejuvenate him, kind of get his head back realigned. And I think Cujo was just a different person after that. You could tell that he really loves this club just by the passion that he has on the field, off the field also. It's uncharacteristic. It's uncharacteristic of Cujo to kind of mouth off at a coach. But I think given the circumstances of that Charlotte game, and then everything that was happening between, it was just, I think everybody was just tired of it, and he was the main one to voice his expressions, or emotions, I should say. But after those couple games that he sat out, I think he was just a new guy. He was contributing every single game almost, whether he didn't get on a score sheet or not. He made a difference, and you could tell if you were in the stadium at Lower.com Field that it was a new Cujo Hernandez that we did not see at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. Thanks for running through that, because I think that sometimes we rate coaches on the tactics, and how well their teams play and stuff, but sometimes we don't give coaches enough credit for being able to handle this kind of stuff. And you're right though, because the Cucho stuff that happened through some of that replacement ref, nonsense, that it didn't seem to grow, and we don't always see that. We see disciplinary issues. Guys are repeat offenders, right? Players that have that seem to just have that. To be able to sort of one and done it, or to keep things internal, to not have leaks and growing stories, and to be able to reintegrate players right away. For Cucho to go off and have a almost 20 goal season does say something about the whole coaching staff and their
Yeah,
ability to also handle not just the tactics but also the personnel.
And that's not a
yeah,
selfish
definitely.
20 either. That's a 20 and 10 assist. That's like
20 and
a
10.
something you see from a
Yeah.
number 10, not from someone who's going to be the last guy touching the ball on most planned plays.
Bob, should we? I kind of got some thoughts about next season. Should we get onto these transfers?
Yeah,
There's
let's
not a
talk
lot
about
of them.
the players in and players out. Outgoing, Alexandre Matan and Yaboa. So you had some, I guess, like some wingers kind of players, outside players that are leaving. Incoming, Evan Bush, and one of my favorite, Lassi Lapalainen. I remember seeing him play. Probably my first game back after COVID when the stadium opened back up for press. A player who I really like, and I think he fits really well with his squad. He can play any wing position. He can get back into coverage, although he's maybe not a defensive minded player. He for a long time was the top left winger on a three attack in a 4-3-3. Very diverse player there in the midfield. Someone who I've really enjoyed watching. I think he fits with this club fantastically. He can be a lot of different positions. He can slot in on that top three if he needed to be too. He could do a lot of things. Overall, not a whole lot of changeover. Evan Bush, let's hope he does not play many games this year for the Columbus Crew. And then when we say it all, I think Lassi Lapalainen is kind of a push on the guys that you lost. So let's talk about what transfers maybe you still have some room for. How are you with cap space? I see you have 3 current designated players with Cucho, Diego Rossi, and Darlington Nagby, I believe is the third.
Yeah.
So where do you find flexibility? Where do you find other opportunities to improve the roster?
I think the biggest spot that I feel like we can make a push for, I wouldn't say this window, but maybe in the summer window, is a center back. The biggest reason why is if you watch the last half of the season after Leagues Cup, Rudy Camacho wasn't at his best. He was still a great defender, but there were a couple of like mental errors, couple mistakes that led to goals. The biggest one was the first goal against Inter Miami in that 3-2 loss at home. But it was just the mental errors, the costly mistakes, not stepping with the other two, with Morera and I can't remember who the other. Chaberco. Not stepping when they needed a step to, try and play that offside trap, if you call it that. But it was just one of those things where Rudy, you're better than this. He is also getting up there in age, but that's to say the least. But another center back depth would be a great signing for the Columbus Crew, whether it's within MLS, or from Europe. I still kind of new and confused on the whole cash to player trade type thing that was just announced, but I guess we'll see that once it gets put into play. But center back is a big get for the Crew, just to have some depth, because I don't want to see Sean Zawatsky be thrown around again and again in different positions to where he's comfortable but not comfortable and whatnot. So if we had to get one, it'd be a center back.
Th- this is going to kind of take us into the depth chart kind of stuff, but I sometimes see back threes, and I sometimes look at those and see like a center back where it's like, okay, you're playing a back three because you have a center back that you really want on the field for
Mhm.
whatever reason, but that guy doesn't really work in a two. Um, if Rudy Camacho is not at his best all season, do you see this team at any point transitioning into like a straight four back?
Um, I would say yes, but only when it's necessary, right? So Sean Zawatsky is one of those players that he said he's comfortable playing everywhere except for goalie. Um, he's done pretty well at center back when we had him there. But I think at the same time, the way that Nancy has his system set up is not made for a four back,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Sure.
Only because the way that he likes to play, he wants to have the wing backs um push more forward. So, and then our two center backs, the left and right center back, kind of get up in the midfield to where we just have Camacho as the sweeper. So it's just one defender. Um, almost, if you think about it, almost like the shape of a house, where Camacho is the roof of the house or and whatnot, exempting Patrick Schulte from this. But the way his tactics are, he has a lot of play going through the wingbacks to where they are more advanced in an advanced position than they are defensively. If you watch on the attack from the opposition, the center backs normally are the ones that go out to the wing so that the wing backs can kind of fill in um, that center back position. Just because they were so advanced and they have to track back,
Mhm.
the center backs are more likely to push out to the wing to limit the play, limit the crosses inwards towards the six, and clear the ball out and hope for a counterattack.
Yeah, so when I see this team, I kind of think of you guys are a mix of two things that work really well in Major League Soccer. There are teams like Red Bull who are a system team, less of the superstars, more of the coaching, the tactics, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And then there's teams like Miami who are, all stars. Every player on the pitch is better at you than every position they're on. And there are a few teams that go by either one. I kind of see you guys as having that on offense. Like there's a bit of fluidity there with the creative top tier players. But the defense to me, I look at these guys, Shiberko, Camacho, Morera. I don't see any, to compare this to your little sister there. There's no Matt Miazga. There's no Miles Robinson on this team. Is that how you feel also? Is there anyone on defense that really steps up like this is a superstar? Or would you agree that like the way I see it is, Wilfred Nancy has a really organized unit back here, and they don't necessarily need any superstars to be really good.
Yeah, no, I think I'm inclined to agree with you because when when Yevon Shaberko came over, um, finally after all of the personal matter stuff with him that was happening with the transfer and everything overseas was settled, um, you see Chaburko as he's still iffy on some things, whether he needs to go, whether he needs to stay back. But I'm inclined to agree with you, where I think this back three is a well-oiled machine on good days, just because of the tactics that Coach Nazi has implemented into this team. Um, do we want a Miles Robinson? Sure. Do we want a Matt Miazga? No way. That guy's too temperamental for for
I
Nazi
agree
and his
on that.
staff.
Yes.
But I think with the way that this back three plays together, they are. I mean, what we have 40 goals conceded
Yeah.
last year. I think it said.
Yes, that is very good.
It's very well. I mean, you also throw in Arson and Farsi on the wing backs, but this back three is solid. There could be some times where, as I mentioned about Rudy Camacho, there could be like mental errors or a couple of misplayed balls. But I think this back three is very quick to get back on defense and limit the mistakes that they give up in the defensive final third, and kind of take the sting out of it and slow down the quick opposition if we're playing like a Miami, a Cincinnati, or even a Red Bull. I mean, just look at the
Didn't work so well on that one. We'll talk about
yeah,
that
no,
later.
yeah, no, not at all. But no, I think we don't need the flashy players, the ones that always get called up to the USMNT. But I think we're fine with these 3.
Let's move up the next step and talk about the wing backs you have here.
Mhm.
Uh, you got a lot. You're kind of
Yeah.
spoiled for, you got Max Arfston on the left. DeJuan Jones, is he still on the team?
DeJuan Jones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then on the right side, you have Farsi, Andre Herrera, Zawitsky when you need him. Let's talk first about the depth chart and then about what their responsibilities are on the field because they, have quite a bit moving up and down.
Um, when it's so funny because Yaya Boa, the outgoing transfer or not really outgoing transfer, but option decline that now he's in San Diego. When Yaya Boa was eventually overtaken by Max Arfston, I mean, you're looking at a kid who was drafted from San Jose Earthquakes 2 in the MLS Super Draft in 2023. Um, when that kind of took over and Max Arfston was showing his speed, his defensive ability, we're like, okay, we kind of got something in this guy. And then he goes and he scores a goal against Atlanta United 6-1 in 2023, scores an absolute missile against New England Revolution 5-1 at Gillette Stadium this year. Um, you're like, who is this kid? Right? I mean, he's very like underrated, flown under the radar, but I'm so happy he's with us and not anybody else. He has the ability to, he's a mainly left footed player, but he can also kind of dribble on his right foot and get stuff going with his right from the left side of the box. Mo Farsi is the complete opposite, right? Where he's right footed, but can pass, shoot with his left. And he also has, Mo Farsi has a little bit of a, how can I say, he has a little bit of a bite to be in the attack more often than Arfston does. Um, and he has speed. They both have speed. But I feel like Farsi is the Farsi is the one that everybody wants to go after because he can easily bounce pass and get around a defender, um, cross it inside the penalty area to Christian, Cucho, Diego, whoever is in the box at the time. Um, but their responsibilities are more so because they're the ones that get the ball the most, right? If you watch how the crew play, it's from Schulte to the center backs kind of around all three, and then out to the wings, back to the middle to either Sean Zawatsky or Nagby, and then it's just back to the wing backs, whether it's Arfs on the left, Farsi on the right. They're the ones that kind of dictate the play. It's not really the midfielders, it's not really the nine, but these wing backs are the key to the attack of the Columbus Crew. On one hand, you can have, Cujo Hernandez drop back into the defense, collect the ball, and then just absolutely hit a launcher towards Farsi on the right hand side, and it's pretty much 1v1 for Farsi and the defender. But that's how the crew play normally, is just through these two guys, and half time it works, half time it doesn't. But I'm hoping that it works more often than it doesn't this upcoming season.
Midfield's been solid for you guys for a long time. Nagby, Zawitsky, those are their projected starters. Darlington Nagby, I like to refer to him now as Paul Pogba's childhood hero. Darlington Nagby. Of course, when those rumors came out this summer, I thought it was funny. I actually looked it up to find the age. I'm like, they're the same age. There's no way he grew up watching that. But that was, the excuse trying to drill up interest for Major League Soccer. Yeah. Love that. Huge for this team. Darlington Nagby, is he still a DP quality player in your opinion?
I love Darlington Nagby. He's a great guy. It's fun to talk to him at training and stuff like that. I don't think so.
I was a little surprised when I was looking up the contracts of the guys to see that Darlington Nagby was that guy.
I don't think so. I do think that he is a player that's worth still having in the starting lineup because,
of course, that's never.
I mean, he's the most fouled player in MLS. He's the rock in the center mid spot with a crew. I don't think that he's worth a DP spot, only because I still have a grudge to this day. If the crew could have bought down Nagby out of a DP contract and we signed Rossi, I still think that we could still hold on to Lucas Zelarayan in 23 and 24. But I feel like with Nagby and the experience that he has, I don't think he's worth DP money, but he's worth a very good contract to where he can stay and retire with the Columbus Crew.
What about the depth there in the midfield? Who else do you have here? You got Shambost, Derek Jones, and there's
Yeah.
a new kid, Taha. Was that his name?
Taha Haburun. Yep.
Yeah.
Um, I like Dylan. Um, he is probably the newcomer for me, newcomer of the year for me. He didn't play much, but when he's on the pitch, he makes a very good impact. Um, I can't remember what game it was, but it was like his very first start, and he gets 2 assists off corner kicks. Um, he's one of those guys that he picks up on things very fast. Um, he can also you have him listed as the third under Diego Rossi. Um, he has a good right foot. He can his hold up play is very good also. I see another one. I think you have him on a Christian that can play center mid. Also, is Az. Um, he is a fireball. Um, love him. We didn't see much of him last year, but when we did, he has the ability to get in behind the back line. He has the ability to spring forward and attack with his speed. Vision is very good. Um, and he is probably slated to make more appearances this year than he did last year. Derek Jones, on one hand, that guy is just huge. I love his physicality. He's not scared to go in to a hard tackle. Whether it's a card, sure, why not? Do we need it? Probably, because we're trying to kill the game off. But he's a big center mid, and I think the Crew need that when they're trying to kill off games. They're trying to close out games and just get the icing on the cake, get the win. Derek Jones is the big body that you need to kind of slow things down.
Sometimes you'll need a little more bite
Mhm.
than Darlington Nagby has to offer.
Yeah.
AZ Jackson, very interesting player. I remember when we talked to St. Louis City last year, they were like, "This is the guy to watch. He's the next guy. He's going to step up. He's going to be huge for this team this year." And they traded him away. It was very unceremonious. Hasn't lived up to some of what we thought he had. He's still only 23 years old, so we'll see what he has to offer this season. But he's definitely a player who's going to be kind of like in the back of my notebook on this one. Scott.
Yeah, I just want to go back to that midfield pairing real quick. On our little depth chart here, we've got Darlington Nagby and Sean Zawadzki as the starters. Is that kind of what you see? And I guess my question comes from just as last season, Aiden Morris was the guy, right?
Yeah.
He was Nagby's partner. He was impactful. He scored a couple of big goals for you, but he was really an all action kind of midfielder. He got his transfer, which I thought was really well deserved for him to get kind of new opportunities. But I was not convinced that the midfield was as good after the transfer as it was previously. I was not convinced that he was adequately replaced.
No,
Have we sorted that out?
no, you are one of a lot of fans that feel the same way. I kind of feel the same way. I feel like Sean Zawadzki is more so very timid when it comes to defending. He's good at defending. He's good at offense too. Don't get me wrong. But Aiden Morris had this bite in him, whereas he's just like Derek Jones, not as a big body, but he goes in the tackles, clean, wins the ball. He's going after any and everybody that he can. We don't see that from Sean, right? We see a more of a attacking presence for in Sean Zawadzki and Darlington being more of a defensive midfielder than we see. Than we had Aiden and Darlington being both as a defensive mid. Um, but no, you are one of a million Crew fans that I see on the internet like, oh well, Zawadzki's no Aiden Morris, he's good, but we need someone like Aiden Morris. I agree. We do. However, Derek Jones just doesn't have the, how can I say that? I don't think he has the minutes in him to be a constant starter like Aiden Morris was.
I
And I
see.
think if we get a midfielder in a transfer window sometime this year, I don't know if and when, but if we get somebody, I feel like they need to go after somebody who is like Aiden Morris that can replicate the Aiden Morris esque style of play, and maybe throw Sean Zawadzki more forward if we have him on the field, and that way we have more of a four forward than we have a three and just two on the wings.
Yeah,
Anything else?
no, go ahead. But
I was just going to ask if there's anything
Kidding.
else about the top three guys we really need to talk about. We know who the main characters are here. Cucho Hernandez up top, 19 goals, 10 assists. I think if he doesn't put 20 in this year, it's going to be a disappointing year for him. Diego Rossi, Christian Ramirez. It was. If I remember correctly, there were some availability issues getting all three of them on the field at the same time. Tell me how much that means to you, and if there's any other guys we could slot in here. We talked about Az Jackson, Lassi Lapalainen, not a guy we've talked about yet, but we know he can cover those wing positions. He could probably even fill out in left back if necessary. You also have Hinestroza, who's a guy who I thought was going to be a bigger player on this squad than he turned out to be. Can you talk about this offense and how they operate?
Yeah, so with these three, also with the Jason Russell Rowe, um, with Jason Russell Rowe up there, um, this is kind of it's a hard situation. You mentioned it, Bob, that it was kind of rough to get these three on the field all at one time because you have Jason Russell Rowe who's starting to shine. Marino Hinestroza went on loan to, I can't remember where he went. I think it was Nacional. He's come back. I would love to see a bigger role from Hinestroza, maybe off the bench. But I would love to see him get starts. He had a couple bright moments. The goal against Montreal last year was a good moment. His goal against Nashville was a good moment. I haven't really seen too much of Lapinainen, but I know he had, I think it was a big 10 plus goal contribution season in 2022 under Nancy during his time at Montreal. Um, I mean, I can't really say much about the three because I mean this three is just they're good
they are good.
and they let their play talk for themselves. Um, I think the biggest thing also to see, hoping that it gets done this year, is Cujo Hernandez going to get a contract extension. He's in his last year of his contract this year. Um, do we see him out in the summer? Do we see a contract extension being in the works, getting done this year? If it is a transfer out, I wouldn't see anything less than 23 million. But as I said, this three let the play speak for themselves.
Yeah. Is there anything they can't do? Is there anything you're like, yeah, this team's bad at winning
I have
headers,
one.
something like that?
You answer first, then I'll give you an answer to that.
You look, you can't say beat the Red Bulls in the playoffs. All right.
that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, this three does everything. I would say the one thing that they can't do is get their emotions all riled up with the referee, because that's a big one with Rossi and Hernandez. Is they want to be the voice to the official. Sometimes it doesn't get them in trouble, but at sometimes it's like, watch what you say because these officials don't play around now.
Yeah.
But other than that, other than probably what I was going to say is beat the Red Bulls in the playoffs. Yeah, that's about it.
No, yes, it is kind of connected to that, and the one weakness of each squad, and you don't see this a lot with teams like number 10s because like Luciano Costa is easy, more adept at breaking down elite defenses, but you guys struggled with Cincinnati. That's a team you don't want to lose to each year. You struggled with Charlotte. You struggled with Seattle, 4-0, got completely shut out, and then you struggled with Red Bull New York in the finals when their defense was finally clicking on all cylinders. So it seems like there are some elite defenses that are the teams that are giving you trouble. No one is going up to this team and winning a shootout. You're not losing games 5-4. But you do have those big defenses. I'm going to add Charlotte in there. That's going to be an issue.
Can we put an asterisk next to Seattle? Because we had Sean Zawatsky in net off of a stupid mistake from Abraham Romero.
Yeah, that's true.
I'll
give you an asterisk.
But it wasn't a 4-2 match. You still didn't put one in the back of the net, right?
Well, yeah, because we had to play like 70-something minutes with the midfielder in net. But no, you are right, yes. That Seattle match was... I watched that match the other day on MLS Season Pass again, and that match was just absolutely horrible. It was... Yeah, it was... I don't even know. It wasn't the team that we know. Normally, we're scoring like the first 10 minutes of a match, and by the time it was like the 30-something minute, it was still nothing. I'm like, what are we doing? I just got home from work, and I'm like, what are we doing? And then Romero gets that red card, and I'm like, oh, well, this sucks. And it all went downhill from there. But, yeah, that Seattle match was a bummer.
For the purposes of this, we'll actually let you erase that. But the question stands that against these top-tier defenses, it seems like maybe there's not the way to break it down as much as there is against everyone else. Is there a plan to, do a little better? Against, you got to beat Cincy, guys. Come on.
Yeah, we have to beat Cincy. I actually asked Wilfried Nazi that. I wouldn't say that exact question, but something similar to that the other day at media availability was I asked him if he went back after the during the offseason and watched any matches that he thinks where he could pick apart and kind of implement tactics to do things better on defense. And he told me he watched no MLS games during the offseason after the Red Bull series. He watched 0 MLS games. And when he said that, in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, we have to do something to start off preseason with a better defensive tactic against the teams that you mentioned, Bob. And I was just like, that's interesting to say. But he did go on and say that he's going to be implementing a couple more. He didn't really get too much into detail. A couple more different tactics for the defense to kind of make sure that they hold the ball more in possession than they would to kind of just let the other team have the ball, which I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I guess we'll see. But no, it was these teams, Cincinnati, Charlotte is absolutely crazy. Cincinnati, we got to beat Cincinnati for sure. Defensively, I got nothing, honestly. I have no idea.
We're going to finish up with some storylines and predictions. The storylines are posed as questions, although they might just be general musings. I got to come in hot and start the first one. Why Cleveland?
Oh, man. So the reasoning was that they wanted to get more fans. And why not go to Cleveland? Because the Haslams own the Cleveland Browns.
For people who don't know the background of the story, they are playing Inter Miami, and that was something that's teams have when they host have been circled on the calendar. This is a team you want to host. You want to get those messy tickets. A lot of season ticket holders sell the tickets for at a profit if your seats are good enough. And that game was moved from Columbus to Cleveland. I don't know about Cleveland very much. I know two things about Cleveland. It's not that close to Columbus. Number one. And number two is do you remember the old, it was a fake, and I don't remember what comedy show it was on. It was like a fake entertainment, like, come to Cleveland video that a bunch of guys made, a bunch of comedians. Do you know what I'm talking about there? It was like one of those
I think I've heard
musicals
something about
like
that.
Come to Cleveland, and it was like LeBron's half our economy, and like no, I'll have to share that out to everyone else because you guys got to see this at some point too. That's all I know about Cleveland. It doesn't seem like a great place. 2 hours away?
Hour and a half. Hour and a half, maybe hour 40, give or take traffic on 71 North. They want to expand the fan base because they want to get more people. They want to get more fans from Cleveland because Haslam's on the Cleveland Browns. Um, and I think the other thing is Messi drew north of 25,000 standing room only also last year at LDC. Um, I think we could draw more. Although I would have liked to see it at the Horseshoe where the Ohio State Buckeyes play, but I don't know if they would have allowed it because that would have been another special event after the Columbus Blue Jackets Stadium Series against the Red Wings in March. Um, but it's Cleveland, the Haslams. I mean, it kind of coincides with one another. Um, the other thing I can't remember what it is. The other thing is um, there. I know that there was talks about a pro team being up in Cleveland. Whether I think it was MLS Next Pro team being in Cleveland, so they want to show that Cleveland will work as a soccer market. Um, so that's the other reason. It sucks though, but I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, I get the economics of it
Yeah.
and stuff like that. I understand too, trying to be like, hey, look,
Money makes the monkey dance, right?
there's market here. Yeah. The thing that I hate is uh giving away kind of competitive advantage, that home field competitive advantage for this kind of money grab, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not playing on your home field, which is, specific dimensions sometimes that teams are planning around.
Hmm.
Um, it's not having your home fans in their regular seats, in their regular places, who are bouncing and going and supporting the team in a way that you can prepare for and stuff like that. You go 2 hours down the road, an hour and a half down the road. Uh, some fans are diehards. They're going to make that trip. Yes. Some fans are going to do it for Messi. Some fans will do it because they love Columbus. But other fans are not going to make that trip.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, yeah, it's too far, or
Yeah.
I can't actually swing that with work today. So like, you're giving stuff up, and I hate that. Is that kind of the biggest reason that sucks to you?
Me personally speaking, as somebody who has followed this team for about 12, 13 years, um, it does suck because I would have loved to be at a place where the guys get the most support, and that's at LDC. Um, if you guys have ever seen pictures of LDC, our roof is probably one of the best roofs in the league, only because the
Great
way that
brag.
the Nordeca, what's that?
Great brag.
Oh, the way that the Nordeca set up, it's I can't remember the angle. It's at a slant. It's at
Kind of
what's
like
that
a
called? Yeah,
downward slope.
yeah, and the sound travels very well. You don't get that in Cleveland. Cleveland is
Mhm.
very, very well open. Um, Huntington Bank Field, I think it is. It's very well open. You don't get good sound reverberation. You don't get the closeness to the pitch that lower.com gives you. It also sucks because I heard in April it gets cold in Cleveland because it's right there on Lake Erie, pretty much. Um, that's another thing that sucks. I don't like. I mean, I like the cold, but I don't like to be cold. Um, so again, I get it's a money thing. More money means more revenue. Revenue means more money in the owner's pocket. Owners are tending to spend money. Yeah, we can get our center back position that I was talking about earlier. Um, but it is what it is. I just have to, suck it up. I'm just a guy in the
As a
press
wise
box.
man
I'm on
once
the roof.
said, "Mo money, more problems." Okay,
Yeah.
we got to move on here. Can you find flexibility to make roster changes? Darlington Nagby, I just looked it up, is making 1.5 million. Seems like that could possibly be bought down to a higher TAM contract.
Yeah.
Not sure, would have to look that up, but it seems like that's really the only flexibility to add anyone of note. Is that kind of how you see things?
Yeah.
Cucho's got to get
As I
paid,
mentioned
and that's got to
earlier.
be priority number one throughout the rest of this season.
Correct.
Um, team's biggest need, we talked about that, kind of a center back. And
Yeah.
if you could add to one position, what would you choose? Center back, I would say midfield depth too, because Whether or not you intentionally did that when you were talking about Zawitsky, you didn't sound like you were giving him the full throated endorsement we might have expected.
No, I mean like I said, Sean. He's a great guy. He's a good player. I just think he's very timid on the defensive end of a midfield spot. But he's one of the guys that you go to for literally anything, whether it's a shot on goal, whether it's hold up play, assists, etc., all that fun stuff.
Now on to the predictions. What is the most realistic season outcome? What is the team's best possible outcome? And what is the team's worst possible outcome? I'll go first. I think if you guys aren't looking at MLS Cup as a possibility, you're selling yourself short. I think that should absolutely be the number one priority. Looking at what you guys did last year, which was off to a quick start, but then a little early spring slump. I think you guys went like 0-2-5 with 5 losses in like a really short span there. That was a little disappointing. Without that, you guys could have been chasing 2 trophies. You would have been in a fight for maybe a shield or something like that.
Yep.
And what's the worst possible outcome is, things don't click. You have some issues. I don't think Wilfred Nancy is going to let this team slip out of playoff position, but you wouldn't want, a full slate of away games in order to get yourself through the playoffs. Is that kind of how you see things?
Yeah. Realistic outcome, obviously MLS Cup. Best possible outcome, I think, if we don't get cut, probably second in the East. And then the worst, probably no lower than fourth.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the worst possible outcome is that, honestly, like the legs on, oh man, I just blanked. Nagby, sorry.
Yeah.
The legs on Nagby go like mid-season, and he, is not the guy that he has been for his entire career. That seems really unlikely to me. But it's like your worst possible outcome is that, or some kind of injury or something like that, and not having the roster flexibility to actually address that. That kind of thing, I think, especially if it happens in the midfield, could really hamstring this team. Also, that front three as well. Obviously, they're incredible. If you're missing one of them, you're kind of okay. It seems like if you're missing 2 of them, the top end of this team really drops off.
And with a plus 32 goal differential, you could score 15 goals less, concede 15 goals more, and still be in a really good spot to make the playoffs. So
Yeah.
I think that all these things are kind of minor. But let's talk about our final question, which is what storyline is going to impact the Crew's season trajectory the most? Is there one thing we need to know, a player, a signing, a situation that if X goes right, we are doomed for success, and if X goes wrong, we're really in some trouble here.
I mentioned it earlier. I think Cucho, honestly, like again, last year of his contract. If we end up selling him, our season probably goes down the drain. If we get him a contract extension, I think he's here for a couple more years, and we're fighting for more trophies. CONCACAF Champions Cup, Leagues Cup, Shield, Eastern Conference, MLS Cup, all that fun stuff.
I agree. But I think you guys have, Diego Rossi can step up and take that position. Christian Ramirez is very good at playing striker. And again, 19 goals, 10 assists on a team that had a plus 32 goal differential. I don't think it's going to mean quite as much as, of course he's an incredible player. And that's a player, as your confidence goes, Cucho Hernandez goes too. I don't think he's irreplaceable for you just because it's a system, it's a defense. It's not like if you pull, I'm trying to think of a bad defensive team like Portland. If you take Cabecita off of that team or Evander off of that team, which is like worst case scenario, that might actually be happening. They are screwed if that happens. I don't think that you guys are quite in that much trouble.
Yeah, nobody's irreplaceable, but I do think that Cucho raises the ceiling for this team. He takes you from being like a definite playoff team who's going to maybe make some noise in the playoffs to a team where you're like, look, if you get into the playoffs, there's no reason that this team shouldn't be thinking MLS Cup. And that's the sort of difference that I see with Cucho. I think for me,
against my Red Bulls.
Except against the Red Bulls. I think for me, the one that I'm looking at is actually that midfield spot. Because I think that's the one that makes a difference, right? Bob was talking earlier about the the difficulty sometimes in breaking down those elite defenses.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about not having replaced Aiden Morris, but that there's an opportunity there for Zawidski or Shambost or somebody
Yes.
to step up, to fill a role, to be something different, to add a different dimension to this team that maybe it didn't have previously. That is going to be one that I will be watching really closely this year to see if one of those guys can just own that spot, make it their own, and add something different to this team.
Great thought.
Cool.
All right.
Great thought.
We are just about done for today. Ty, thank you again for coming on. Let us know one more time where we can find your work throughout the season.
Yeah, if you guys, if anybody likes writing, you guys can find my work on massreport.com or follow me on Twitter at FisherTyler__. You guys can listen to the Wiseman Say podcast, a Columbus soccer specific podcast every Wednesday, starting this Wednesday at 8 p.m. over on YouTube or wherever you guys get your podcasts.
Thank you so much for coming on again. And anyone else looking at our schedule, Monday the 20th, we'll have St. Louis City at 7 p.m. And on Wednesday the 22nd, we'll be going 8 o'clock with Mark Fishkin for the New York Red Bulls. 2 other up-and-coming previews we can't wait to get to. Thank you guys for joining us again. Make sure you subscribe, and we will see you again real soon.